Hello there. Welcome to the Marriage Unmasked podcast. Today we are talking about the topic too tired for sex. What's really going on?
Yeah, we're really unmasking what is going on underneath when you're saying I'm too tired, right? It's deeper than you think, and we want to really dig into what is going on. And you know, too tired, right? That seems to make you think that they are just physically exhausted, right? And a lot of times that is why. You are physically exhausted, but there's an exhaustion that nobody talks about as well. It's not just physical, it can also be emotional. For me, as a mom, I remember when I had our kids were younger, and um we Adam and I went through a phase where we weren't having much sex, and I remember just feeling like, this is what it's going to be like. And it was very like depressing to me, but at the same time I didn't know what to do about it because I was tired and he was tired, and we didn't really talk about it. And part of that exhaustion, though, wasn't just the physical tiredness, it was the like being touched out by my kids, right? Like, I don't really want someone else to touch me, or feeling like I'm carrying the weight of so much in our family.
Yeah.
And so that is exhausting, especially for a wife. Like for a husband, I mean, I think that's more of what he is made to handle. But when a husband is more passive and his wife has to step into that and feel like she's carrying the weight of so much, that is exhausting. And I felt that so much.
And I think in that time, I think I was working really long hours too.
Yeah.
So I was like gone. So I was feeling physically tired as well. And then Kara's dealing with all this stuff at home, and I'm not necessarily supporting very well or not leading her in what she's going through at home. Just kind of coming home and checking out, or just doing other things that need to be done, so that there's a lot of disconnection that was happening. Just a lot of like emotional and relational disconnection, as well as the physical exhaustion that was on top of that, and that just doesn't make for a very good intimate life at all.
Yeah, I mean, that tiredness too can be like when you're not feeling seen, when you're not feeling safe. And those things were happening as well. We weren't really seeing each other. I wasn't really necessarily seeing him for what he was bringing to the table, and I wasn't necessarily seeing him for who he was. I was a lot of times seeing him for who he wasn't.
And likewise me. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
same thing.
that's the opposite of what we need for intimacy, because we weren't giving each other the appreciation. We weren't we weren't really seeing each other, and then because we were seeing the things that we weren't, right? I'm seeing what he's not. I'm then criticizing and other things that make him feel unsafe.
Yeah.
And I was definitely feeling unsafe with him as well. And it was like a survival mode. It was just like, okay, get through the day, and oh, okay, well, we didn't have a connection. We're not having sex. Okay, well, that's because we're tired. And it was sad.
Yeah.
It was really sad, because God has so much goodness for us, and he has goodness for us in this area of feeling tired too, right? He says in Matthew 11:28, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. I love that passage, because, God cares. He cares about these things. This is not something that is like, oh, God doesn't care about that. No, he does. He cares about everything that involves your heart and your mind and your body. And when you're exhausted, when you're feeling unsafe, when you feel unseen in your marriage, he cares about that.
And he's always there, ready to provide that rest. Like, I think sometimes we're so focused on the earthly stuff, or the things that we're going through, or the relationship problems and stresses, or just the work that needs to be done, or whatever. And we sometimes forget, because we're so focused on those things, we forget that God is always there. He's always available with that rest for us to tap into at any time.
Yeah.
And so we can tap into that, and we can enjoy that rest, and that will refresh us.
Absolutely. Because a lot of times we go to other things to try to feel better, right? To get that some kind of happiness. I know, especially back then, I was doing a lot of emotional eating. Like, I think we kind of both were. It was like, okay,
We
the
were
kids
both.
are in bed, and it's like, okay, just
We're gonna just
numb out with food, kind
Yep,
of.
yep. We just had, special treats or whatever, and we would just like eat and watch
Yeah.
TV and kind of check out. Like
Yeah.
we could watch shows and just like kind of veg out for a while. And there's no connection between us. There was just like we're kind of just basically trying to relax a bit, which you need to do.
Yeah, but that wasn't
But that
necessarily
wasn't
providing the
necessarily
rest that we really
Yeah.
needed for our hearts and our souls. We needed to dig deeper into our marriage and into what was really going on, which we did not know how to do back
Right.
then. Yeah. So
Another thing that happens when we're talking about this is that you have to realize that there's something going on in your nervous system when this is happening, when you're too tired for physical intimacy. Because there's something to do with feeling safe in your nervous system that allows you to relax and to enjoy physical intimacy together and desire it. Yeah, because if you don't feel safe, if you don't feel seen, if you're feeling like triggered into like emotional issues or triggered back into childhood events or things like that, then your nervous system really goes into survival mode. And so you're in like the freeze, the flight, the fawn. What's the other one?
fight.
Fight. Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
And none of those are gonna create an atmosphere where physical intimacy is really something that you desire or want or that you go after, because you're just in this terrible survival mode, and not going after that connection. I know there are many times when I was in survival mode, I would feel criticized or whatever in the relationship. I'd come home from work and I'd feel this burden of all this home stuff. I would feel insecure about things that I didn't get done at home or whatever. And I could really like get triggered fast into these insecurities inside of myself and just not feel like I was good enough, not feel like I was strong, or and in that atmosphere, in that kind of like insecure place, you're not going to go after physical intimacy. You're going to be like shut down. You're going to kind of like close off instead of like go after something and really like seek connection. I was seeking disconnection because I was trying to survive. I felt unsafe, you know, just insecure.
Really, you were unsafe with yourself.
Yes, very much so.
Because
Yes.
when you feed those insecurities and you choose thoughts about yourself that aren't true, and you're criticizing yourself, you're judging yourself,
Very
you're
harsh.
accusing
Very
yourself.
harsh on myself.
Yeah, then you are really an unsafe place for yourself.
Yep.
And how you're not going to feel desired when you're not desiring yourself,
Yeah.
right? You're not loving yourself in that, and so that would be hard for you to want,
Yeah.
that kind of intimacy.
You don't
when
feel
you
like-
don't feel desirable.
Yeah, you don't feel like you deserve it.
Yeah.
You kind of withhold it from yourself because you don't feel like you deserve something like that because you're in kind of a shame place
Yeah.
instead of a, loved, secure, strong, like mindset.
Yeah. So if you're in that like stress response, right? Maybe your spouse triggers you, they say something, or you are just feeling unsafe in the marriage in general. It's important to practice that regulation. Maybe it's deep breathing. Maybe it's just connecting with them without any expectation. Touch, right? Snuggling, talking things out, just loving behaviors, being supportive, getting the support that you need, without any expectation, right? Just focusing on that connection, because sex isn't the problem. The disconnection is the problem there. And
so some little acts of kindness can go a long way. Just
Yeah.
little things can really start to build that connection back again.
Yeah. Another thing that sometimes is behind the I'm too tired is just that for women, and femininity, we need emotion. We need that emotional connection. And I know that men, they need their wife, they desire that like feminine softness. And men also desire, they want to be desired, they want to be wanted.
Absolutely.
I can't imagine what it's like for a man to, try to, make a move on his wife and just can obviously tell she doesn't want this.
Yeah.
I mean, I would feel like that would just kill
Oh
the
yeah.
mood so fast.
Absolutely.
And so men they want to be wanted too, but women, we really do need that connection, that emotional connection first. Women are not like a light switch where you just, oh, okay, yes, I want, like your husband makes it known that he wants it, and then you're like, okay, me too. Like it's not sometimes maybe, right? Or maybe it's the other way around where, a wife has a higher drive than her husband, right? And maybe she is, but it's probably, she might have a higher drive probably because they have good connection. I know we've had that where I have I have a higher drive. There were some times like that. I think now we're pretty equal, but, my drive like skyrocketed when we got
Mm.
the masculine feminine dynamic like balanced in our relationship, because it tanked before when he was more passive and I was like more in my masculine trying to run everything and control and
Yeah.
lead everything.
The attraction was dead. I mean, kills the attraction
Yeah.
between the two. Like she doesn't look as radiant and like attractive to me when she's like in her masculine. I definitely don't look attractive or strong when I'm like passive and like
Yeah.
whining or something
No.
like that. That doesn't work very well.
Yeah.
So yeah, getting that more aligned, that masculine feminine energy is huge for
Yeah.
this whole topic.
Yeah, and that boosted my libido way up. And so, but it wasn't like it still wasn't a light switch, right? It was
Yeah.
still this beautiful balance that we were creating with masculinity and femininity, and it was still, connection, and I felt desired. I felt cherished. When I feel pursued as a woman, that just is going to make intimacy and sex so much more enjoyable. It's going to make you want it so much more.
It really starts early on in the day to like, I mean, physical intimacy is so much more than physical before it finally gets physical, like later on. Like you build this anticipation and you build this connection with each other when you're flirting and you're texting throughout the day, or you're just like playful, and the emotional connection is building throughout the day. Whereas if you don't have that all day long and you're just going to try to flip a switch at the end of the day, it just isn't realistic at all.
Yeah, and it really takes a lot of openness too, right? A lot of vulnerability. If we're just talking about surface level stuff, that is not for a woman, like that emotional connection is probably not there. Like opening your heart, being willing to talk about the deeper things and share your concerns, or to share, your
To feel
struggles.
safe in all that, to know that I'm a safe place to bring those
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah, pursuing her all the time really is, and men, they want to be pursued. We were just talking with a couple, we were just coaching a
Yeah.
couple, and one of the biggest things that the husband needed was he wants to be pursued.
Yeah.
And so it's not just a woman thing either. But I know for a woman, she wants to feel like she's more than just her body. I know some women, some wives might feel that way, that it's just about, hey, he just wants my body for sex, right? And that is so sad. And that's not what God intended, and we want you to enjoy all the beauty of sex.
And honestly, I don't think that that's often true. Like I think that is maybe a thought that comes up, but I don't think a man just wants, no connection other than just a physical release. I mean, maybe some guys do,
Yeah.
but I think there has to be more connection than just that.
Well, he might even just be kind of like resigned to that, like,
Maybe.
well, we don't have that connection, so I just at least want her body. I don't know.
Yeah.
We don't have experience of that
Yeah.
necessarily, but that doesn't mean that it's not happening. And I know I've heard from wives where they feel used
Yeah.
for their bodies. And so it's probably stemming from disconnection. and the husband maybe still he desires that physical connection, but they're not having the emotional connection.
And I think too, for a guy, that the physical connection can be more emotional. Like it is kind of fulfilling also some kind of an emotional like high for him. And so he's getting some of that emotional like connection by having the physical connection. So he's getting something emotional out of it, and then she's not, and that can be really hard.
Mm-hmm.
So that could also be playing a role in that. Mm-hmm. And this kind of goes into too, like the next one is some of the silent stories that we tell ourselves that really steal our desires. When we are saying that we're too tired and whatnot, we sometimes are telling ourselves a story that isn't true. Mm-hmm. So you have to be careful about what are you talking about, inside yourself. What is your internal dialogue around this topic? Like, what are you believing? Mm-hmm. And I know for quite often I've felt like, I'm not doing this very well. I'm not doing this right. And so that would be a block for me, mm-hmm, because I didn't think I was performing very well. And she never really actually said that or felt that.
No, I did not.
So I was putting pressure on myself.
I never thought that. That's the crazy
to like
part.
have this performance, and it's just a story in my head. Like, she's perfectly happy, she's perfectly satisfied, and yet I'm telling myself this ridiculous story about that. And there's some perfectionist tendencies and things like I want to get this really right and just be really amazing at this or whatever. But I would put all this pressure on myself to perform, and sometimes that would actually lead me, because then if I am physically tired or if I'm emotionally whatever, then I'm telling myself that this I have to perform really well. Well, that I'm have this unrealistic expectation of what I'm capable of, and so then I might check out and say, well, I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm tired. So that story was not helping.
Yeah, yeah. Even that whole like he only wants me for my body. That is that is a belief, right? That is a story that could be really keeping you from more connection. There like this is a chore. I think a lot of times for women or for men,
It can be for
this
men
might
too,
come up as like another thing on my to-do list. Okay, we got to do this, right? And if that's the belief we have about it, if that's the way we're looking at it, if that's the thought in our head, that is going to lead to nowhere,
No.
nowhere, um, you know, connection, no connection.
Yeah.
Because who can enjoy something that, well, I mean, I can enjoy some chores. I mean, I like folding laundry, but anyways, at the end of a long day, it's going to be a lot easier for you to say, I'm too tired, if you think this is a chore,
Yeah.
right? Than if you're like, yes, I've been looking forward to this all day. This is going to be so great. And I think sometimes, it's good to like check what are some of your beliefs. We ask in our Healing Your Marriage course on our sex and intimacy module, we ask them to think about what are some of the beliefs that you have about sex and intimacy. If you feel like and I feel like this was maybe a belief that you have or had, is like sex needs to always be this long, drawn out, like very pleasurable. I don't know, well, exactly what the thought is.
I think what I had, I know that it takes longer for a woman to really get, in the mood. And so I had this idea that every sexual experience has to be like a ton of like foreplay in order for this to be successful, in order for me to perform well. Like, it has to be long. It has to be this drawn out thing. Mm-hmm. And that's a story that's not helpful, because it doesn't have to be.
Well, right. And the thing is, that was holding me back, because then I'm like, okay, I don't have the energy for a long hour-long session.
Yeah, forever.
But I do want like a quickie. And he just like could not like,
I couldn't get that through
fathom that.
Which is, yeah, I know.
So, and that's okay. Like sometimes maybe you don't have the energy for a long time, but like you can get something done in 10-15 minutes, right? Or shorter. I don't know. So it doesn't always, it's good to check, like what are these beliefs that I have about sex? Because they could be holding you back too from enjoying it more often.
Yeah.
So the thing is, we got to talk about these things, right? We want to talk about these things. I want you to open up the conversation with your spouse. Don't wait until it's a fight because you've been holding in all these thoughts. You've been, your emotions are pent up inside of you, and then finally you explode. He asks you, he makes a move one more time, and you're like, right? And so it's just, then it turns into this whole fight.
Yeah.
You're blaming, then he's blaming. And it's just this really, it turns out to be this
Right.
really
And then
sad, hurtful
and
thing.
this thing that's supposed to be such a connecting and beautiful thing becomes just a source of pain and contention, and that's really sad.
And we have experienced that.
Yeah.
That was for a while, that was like a big area that was causing us a lot of pain. We were just not.
We were not connecting. We were like talking past each other, not really communicating well
Yeah.
about what our desires were or what we expected.
Yeah. So we want to give you a couple questions just to start the conversation in a really healthy way, and get you to, talk through some of this stuff. So the first one is, what do you feel when I say I'm too tired? And you can ask each other this question because it's not just one person that might say that they're too tired, right? What do you feel when I say I'm too tired? And then the second question is, what kind of connection makes you feel the most desired? This could be like, my answer might be, I love it when you're romantic, when you are thoughtful, when you do something unexpected. Or I really like when you, throughout the day, give me hugs or touch me or, whatever. I really feel pursued, right? So whatever this looks like to you, there's no right or wrong answers here. And then the third question is, what's one thing that helps you to feel safe with me? Because again, as we've talked about, that's a big part of this.
Yeah, intimacy is one of those places where you feel most vulnerable. So, I mean, you're completely open to your spouse.
Yeah.
This is something you share only with them. This is huge. And so, to be safe in that area, to feel very safe and secure in that is extremely important.
And, get curious, don't assume. It's very easy to assume we know the answers for our spouse to these questions and be like, I don't need to ask him questions about it because I already know what he thinks. But get curious. You never know, right? And until you ask some of these questions and dive a little deeper, often some of these things don't come out, or maybe in a healthy way. Maybe it's the pain talking instead of what they really feel, what they really think. So even if you're in a season where you're tired a lot or you're giving this excuse a lot, it's like, I'm too tired. Desire can be reawakened.
Absolutely.
Even if it looks a little bit different than it used to. Sex doesn't always have to look the same in your marriage.
Yeah, it goes through different phases and whatnot. I mean, it has in our own relationship too. Like it doesn't look the same as it did 10 years ago.
I mean, and so many factors play into that. So two things I want to just bring up too is like just the difference between the desire. So there's like a spontaneous desire, right? You want sex now. And then there's a responsive desire where you begin to want it after you feel connected, after you feel touched, after you feel desired. What I'm talking about more with the responsive desire is like throughout the day, even it's like it's just the way you live, right? If I'm living feeling pursued by my husband, if I live every day feeling desired and cherished, I'm going to have a lot more spontaneous desire than, and I'm gonna, that desire is going to be different than if I don't feel that, or if I only feel that an hour before you want to have sex. Oh, now he's touching me, right? Oh, now he's, now he's doing these things, or he only brings me a gift when he wants to have sex that day, things like that. And so just notice those different desires and know what's going on in your relationship. This is just another thing to talk about and get really clear about. And go for some pressure-free touch where there's no pressure to have sex, where you just
no expectation. Yeah. It's just like a connection.
Enjoy. Sometimes you have to like pull back to enjoy these things again or to feel pursued again. Sometimes, maybe you just take sex off the table, until you really feel again desired and pursued and safe. Um, Enjoy some quality time together. Think about thoughtfulness over performance. I think that's a big one too. That's been a big one for us during sex, but also, leading up to it, as well as just be thoughtful. What do they need to feel desired? What do they need to
Yeah,
enjoy
really
it? What
tuning into the other person and what they're going through and what they need from you.
it's going to go a long way. So, and if you've been struggling in this area and you're just not sure how to move forward, or you just feel like your spouse doesn't get it, especially for wives, if you feel like your husband just is not getting it or he's refusing to change, I don't want you to give up. My restored community is open. It's ready for you to join us. It's this beautiful, safe community where you can come in with other wives who get it. You can get weekly coaching. You get our entire Healing Your Marriage course. You can go through it with your husband or alone. You're going to get monthly challenges. It's just this amazing, beautiful community for you to heal and grow no matter what your husband's doing. And it's going to benefit you. It's also going to benefit your marriage. So I invite you to join us because it's an incredible community, and the link for that is in the show notes. And we'd love to hear if there's feedback. If you have feedback for us, we would love to hear it. Rate, review. We always love hearing from you guys.